Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. Today is September 27th, 2023, and have I got a great show for you. My guest today is almost undefinable in the genre of fantasy. His book just encompasses so many different aspects that can fall within the fantasy realm. It's really almost indescribable, but we'll hear from the author himself and see how he likes to describe it. And I will be bringing him out here in just a moment. Right now, I just want to give you a brief little insight on some of the things that are coming up with Burkhart Books. Of course, you know, we just dropped our last book in the Into the West saga serial, Into the West Family Ties. It is doing very well, and you can purchase this book from Amazon. It is available in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. We hope to be bringing audiobooks very soon. And speaking of audiobooks, if you like to listen to your books, we do have a free beta version of the first book of the series, Into the West, the Orphan Train, available as a download on our website, burkhartbooks.com. Just look in the menu for the audiobook sample page. Now, don't forget, October 1st is coming up very quickly, and I am working furiously behind the scenes to bring you the new companion magazine to our podcast, Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart. The new publication is Book Banter Magazine. The magazine will be featuring articles and book links for authors we have had on our podcast, but we will also have a few authors who are just exclusive for the magazine. As with our first issue, we have Mercedes Lackey as our exclusive interview for the premiere issue of Book Banter Magazine. We're going to be dropping this new publication on October 1st, and we are all ready for Halloween with our Halloween Spooktacular premiere. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter at burkhartbooks.com so that you never miss an issue of this new publication. You're going to love it. But right now, I think it's time for me to stop with my blather and bring out our guest. Please welcome to Book Banter with Dianne Burkhart, Mikel Melwasul.
Good morning. My name is Mikel Melwasul. I usually go by Mick, as in Mick Jagger. I am the author of Paragon Exordium, and I'm very happy to be here today.
I am really excited about this interview because it's so funny. I found you on TikTok where I saw your book, and there was something about it that just really appealed to me. And so I had to bring you on to talk to you about it. And first of all, the one thing that I noticed about this is a big book.
Yeah, yes, it is.
I was just wondering, how long did this take you to write?
Well, I got the idea for it back in high school, so like 2010. And then I didn't start really getting into writing it until 2017, at which point it took about 6 years from start to finish to get it all fully written down and go through all our drafts and our edits and all that. I think really it was more like 5 years because we spent a full year querying it.
And what is the title again?
Paragon Exordium.
And how do you classify this? Because I've seen a lot of things online where there are very different ways to actually categorize your genre.
Right. So it is complicated. I like to refer to it as a genre bending because there's just so many elements of different things, and it really doesn't fit into just one. Like high fantasy doesn't encapsulate it. I've been going back and forth a lot of things. A lot of people call it dystopian, and it's got some dystopian elements, but dystopian usually triggers a sci-fi sense in people, and it's not sci-fi, it's modern. So what I've been defaulting to is an apocalyptic modern epic fantasy, and sometimes I throw the word military in there. So apocalyptic epic military fantasy.
Well, it seems like such a complex story that I can understand. There's so many different elements that you could apply to this that it would be hard to pin it down in just one area. But that could be really good because it's going to appeal to a very wide audience.
Yeah, that's something we really, really want. With my writing especially, I've really honed in and tried to focus on making sure the book is accessible to everyone. That's why there's like no spicy content, which isn't big on TikTok. There's also no super explicit cursing, even there are soldier characters, there are characters that curse. But I wanted this to be a book that my younger brothers could read without their parents having issue with it. I wanted it to be like Tolkien or Lewis, where you can read it at any age and enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And we've had a little success with that, actually, because I have a coworker who was reading it, who's a grandmother, who messaged me and saying she was really enjoying it, and she can't wait to give her copy to her 16-year-old grandson.
Oh, nice.
And that's exactly the kind of thing I want to see. I had a 10-year-old read it, and he tore it up. Now, he's a little bit more of an advanced reader than most people, but he actually did a cosplay of the main character, and that was just super fun. And then I've had people 3 times my age read it and enjoy it. And we just really wanted to hone in on that diverse age group and the ability for anyone of any age to read it and enjoy it and not alienate an audience. It's written for adults. Clearly, the content is very violent at times, but I wanted it to be accessible and not drive people away through small things like spice or foul language.
Now, how much research did you put into it? Because it seems like there's a lot of very modern, very normal elements to this. Mm-hmm. Were you trying to follow anything particular, or is this all just complete creative fiction from your part?
Well, that's interesting. Research, I do a lot of Tolkien reading. I look up a lot of Tolkien names. I've read the Silmarillion 3 or so times. I've got dictionaries of Tolkien and whatnot. So as far as like naming conventions and stuff, I pull a lot of inspiration and reference from Tolkien. So that's where my main research goes into. Mm-hmm. But then there's also the militaristic side. So one of the main characters, Peter Blair, is a private military contractor. And the reason he's a private military contractor is because I'm tired of the farm boy trope. I'm tired of the farm boy who's the chosen one who picks up the stick and is suddenly great at fighting. Because in real life, the farm boy gets killed 2 seconds in. Right, chosen one or not, he's getting wrecked. So I wanted a protagonist that in the world and the environment we've created, it makes sense that they would survive and be able to do the things they have to do. Now, Peter gets his butt kicked more than once. He's not invincible or anything like that, but having the experience he has is key to his character. And one way I worked really hard to make that realistic is my co-author or editor, David Tullius, is a lieutenant in the Army. He'll kill me if I got that wrong, so I hope I got his current rank right, because every time I talk to him, he's gone up a rank. But he's been instrumental. He started out just as like a early stage beta reader, and then we just kept having meetings on it, and to the point where over 6 years we met almost every weekend to discuss it. And he progressed very much from editor to co-author. He'll take entire scenes of military content that I've written, and he'll make sure the dialogue and the jargon works and the setting works and the weapons make sense and all that, because he's got that experience. And that's really the heavier area of research. And then, of course, there's a scene with a tank, and we did a bunch of research to make sure that it was a realistic tank for the people to get their hands on and stuff like that.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you about, because in some places I've seen your book just listed for you, and then some place it has 2 names with David listed as an editor. But then I read somewhere else, there was like a little paragraph where the way that it talked about it, it sounded more of a collaboration.
Yeah, it's absolutely a collaboration. Dave has been iffy and back and forth on how he wants to be credited, because I wrote like 95% of it, but he was there through the whole thing telling me, hey, get rid of that, or hey, add this, or hey, this doesn't work for this character, or just keeping me from tripping up and making sure the story was ironically tight, given the length. But yeah, he's definitely been extremely collaborative. Could not have done it without him. It would be a completely different story without him. My wife as well is an English teacher with an English degree. So I'm constantly throwing stuff at her and she's throwing it back, and she keeps my magic system in check for sure.
Well, and you have a college degree as well.
I do, yes.
But it has nothing to do with writing.
No, I think it brings a perspective to the story, because I studied criminal justice, and so law. The reasons that people commit crimes is a big part of criminal justice is why does crime happen? What causes crimes? There's a bunch of different theories on that. So violence and things mankind has to do for survival in a hostile environment, it feeds into my writing, but it really doesn't have anything to do with my writing.
See, well, that was just one of those things that I noticed about you. And I'm like, oh, here's something we have in common. Because one of my degrees is in forensic criminology. I actually studied to be a profiler and do evidence collection. So
fantastic. Actually, I think one of my stronger elements is dialogue and characters. And I think part of that may come from not necessarily my criminal justice degree, but my fascination with it. I actually took a class in college, which was interviews and interrogation taught by a former FBI agent. And I scored higher in the class than anyone in the class's history, which was really fun because I was just doing interviews and interrogations and learning to read and understand and communicate with people.
That was one of the things that I tell people. It's like, even though I am not doing anything in criminology, having that background of being a profiler and learning how to read people like that is a valuable life skill.
Absolutely.
I may not be working in the field, but it comes in handy almost every single day. Why don't you give us a bit of an explanation of your story?
Essentially, I created a world in which thousands and thousands of years ago, there were more than just humans on the earth. There were elves and dwarves and orcs, were the primary races, which I call the Feligir. And then there were the Faemia, which are minor magical beings created out of magic, but not the original founding beings. But as happens, different groups fight. And eventually that led to humanity's hubris causing a flood, the one referred to in Genesis and most major religions, a catastrophic world flood. And so the elves and the dwarves decided they were going to remove themselves and all magic from our reality until the flood was over and leave humanity to die. Now, something went wrong with that spell, and it didn't wear off for thousands and thousands of years until modern times when the spell broke and the sky was shattered. And humanity was all but wiped out by the effects of technology going out, like a giant EMP hitting, and then just the chaos that spread with everyone assuming the apocalypse was happening. And so now our book picks up about 30 days after the event that becomes known as the shattering, in which the sky looks like it's been broken like glass by the effects of the spell. And we're in a small college town that's trying to figure out what's going on because they've lost communication with everyone. There's a military training base there. That's where Peter Blair and his crew train, and then that's why they're in the town. And they start to notice changes in the world, and a basilisk shows up and starts eating people, and they have to take it down. And then a little dwarf lady shows up, and she informs them of what's going on. And funny enough, Peter's known her his whole life, which he finds interesting, but he didn't know she was a dwarf. And for some reason, somehow, she's been outside of the spell for thousands and thousands of years, influencing humanity. So the story follows Peter primarily. He's one of our main POVs as he goes out into the world to try and explore and figure out what's going on and try and save as many humans as possible and gather them back to the city of Paragon. During the time of the Basilisk attack, there's a young lady named Sarah Young, who is a journalism student who managed to survive the Basilisk attack because she awakened some sort of latent magical ability. And Dr. Walker, the old dwarf, takes a fascination with her and begins to train her on her magical ability. There's another third minor POV, which is Sean Castillo, who's a young teenage boy who goes along with Peter and his crew on their adventures because Dr. Walker says to send him because he has good eyes, because he's seeing things that other people aren't necessarily noticing. And I think that character, he was inspired by a couple different things, but the primary thing was in most shows and television and stories, there's always a child warning and saying, hey, something's going on over there, or hey, I noticed something or I saw something, and the parents or the adults always ignore him, and that's always driven me insane because children notice things no one else does. And if a child's saying, hey, something's wrong or I noticed something, please, for the love of God, listen to them.
Yeah, that sounds like such an amazing story. So what did actually give you the inspiration for this? Where did the story come from?
I've always had a love for fiction and fantasy. I grew up reading Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, the Redwall series, Aragon, The Inheritance Cycle, one of my favorites. And at one point in high school, my dad showed me one of his favorite action movies from the 80s, which was Red Dawn. If you're familiar, it's about communists invading America and basically taking over America in a night. And the Americans, the Wolverines, have to fight back and do guerrilla tactics, classic American fight back, rebel, live on. And so that night I had a dream where it was basically Red Dawn with orcs and stuff. And I woke up and I was like, well, that's cool. I want to write that story. And of course, the first draft of that was just abominable. It had summoning orcs from across reality and stuff. And it was just awful. But I held on to the idea. And then I started trying to really write it after I graduated college because I had some spare time. I was like, you know what? I don't have to get a job. I'm debt free right now because I've worked my hands to the bones. So I'm going to take some time. I'm going to work on this and see if I can do it before I get into anything that's going to fully consume my time. And yeah, it just progressed from there because my buddy Dave, he loves fantasy and stuff, and he hopped on in and he got involved, and and it was also like during the time when like The Walking Dead was big at
Oh
that
yeah.
point, and all this post-apocalyptic survival stuff. So those were definitely influences on it. And just like man versus man, and man versus nature, and man versus horrible monsters, and what's the true evil? Is it mankind? Is there more to it? Complexity of morals, and really one of the big questions the story is asking, I think, is how much can a good man do before he stops being a good man?
There's a quote somewhere that's like, when you look into the abyss looks back into you. And
Mm-hmm.
that whenever you spend so much time with the monsters, how long does it take before you become a monster?
Right.
So that kind of a question has always fascinated me. If you have a good
Right.
character, but they have to do bad things to take care of the other good people,
Mm-hmm.
how long does it take before those acts change that person?
Right. Right. Exactly. And what acts are actually the right acts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really fascinating question. And I love it when people explore that, especially in sci-fi and fantasy. It just seems
Mm-hmm.
like you can go in so many more directions with it there.
Yeah,
That
because it opens up a lot more opportunity to explore things with nuance.
definitely, exactly. Now, I found you on TikTok. So how did you get started doing the videos on there?
So my wife's been a big supporter of mine for a long time. I wouldn't have been able to do this without her, and her confidence in me has been pretty instrumental. With every author deals with imposter syndrome and whatnot. She's a very honest person, and she lets me know when something's bad, but she's convinced my writing is not, and that it can go somewhere. So I launched my book in May, and I've been getting sales, just through friends and family and stuff. But then I was like, well, book talk is a big thing, and books are very popular on TikTok, and there's a whole subculture and sub community on there, and you should just start looking into that. So originally, she made an account to try and just learn about it. And then I finally was like, you know what? We're not getting what I need. Marketing is not my skill. Let's try and get involved in this community, because I'm convinced that if I can just get the word out on this book, it's going to blow up. I am convinced. I just have to get it into the right hands, and TikTok seemed like the best avenue for that without having to pour money I do not have into
Mm-hmm.
Facebook posts that may or may not actually go anywhere.
Yeah. That is one of the things that is a common theme for almost everyone that I talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Writing was the easiest part. Marketing is the biggest nightmare.
Yeah, I
So,
don't hate marketing. I don't mind the marketing element of it because I love talking about my book. And I,
mhm.
I feel like that's about all there is to it when you really boil it down, is just talk about the thing, especially when you've got a unique or creative concept where people really just, they hear it and they love it. And most of the reactions I've gotten have been just super interested. So
Mhm.
it's really just been a question of getting out there and getting people to listen.
Yeah, it seems like the real sticking point for most people is getting the message in front of the right audience.
Yeah, very much
Because you can
so.
get the message down and you know what you're talking about, and people love your message, but it's finding the people who are looking for that particular message.
Right, right. And that's something I'm still working on and exploring, because I'm highly involved in a lot of other indie author communications and stuff, which is great. I love it. I'm learning a lot. And those are people who definitely want to read other people's work, which is great.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to find my way out of the romanticy
Yeah.
side of book talk and find my way into more of clean would really be the way to put it. A lot of people have this perception of fantasy that it's this spicy fae thing. And I mean, there's fae elements to my story for sure, but it's not the spicy thing. So I'm trying to get out and find that audience and reach out to that audience. And one thing I've been saying is it's a great book for dads who don't like fantasy. I've had several dads who just picked it up to read it. And my dad, who doesn't touch fantasy other than when he was reading to us as kids, devoured it. My father-in-law, who also doesn't read fantasy, and he's got ADHD and has a hard time reading books, and he read it in like a week.
Oh, wow.
Um, and just trying to get that audience, getting it into the hands of those people, because they're going to really devour it. But I don't want to like narrow it down to just a certain demographic, because it's written for everyone. I'm going to be working on some videos here in the near future, trying to get in with the Warhammer 40K audience.
Hmm.
Because my co-author's brother-in-law keeps going, wow, that sounds like Warhammer. That sounds like 40K. And that's a massive audience of people who really, really like this kind of stuff. So I'm going to try and get my boots in there and see if I can kind of spread the word there as I try and reach out and communicate. But the other thing, it's a great gateway fantasy because there's elements of real world and fantasy. So people who don't necessarily usually read fantasy are going to start liking fantasy by reading it. And that's coming from people I've gotten to read it.
Yeah.
Not just me, because I mean, I'm biased. I love fantasy, but I've had several readers who are like, hey, I don't really read fantasy, but this was fascinating. And now I want to read other fantasy books.
Now, depending on the different platform that I looked at, your book is listed anywhere from about 730 pages to about 770. With it being as long as it is, did you ever think about breaking it up into 2 books or a trilogy even?
Yeah. So that was heavily debated between my wife and Dave and I, and we discussed it a lot. And what the conclusion we came to was, if I split it up, I would just end up with 2 equally long books, because I would want to explore the characters and environments in more depth.
Yeah.
We talked so much about it, and we're like, no, because we'll just get more into it and drag things out, and we'll use that opportunity to just explore more. So, like, in one sense, I wanted to split it up so I could go into more of the story and more of the characters and details. But it is long, but it's super easy to read. It's not pretentious. It's not dense like Tolkien. It's a breeze to get through. And the story is almost non-stop action. It is constantly pulling you from one scene to the next. But yeah, like, that was one of the reasons we indie published, is because no publisher wants to take a risk on a book that doesn't fit perfectly into one genre and doesn't match the current market, and is a debut novel and is over 231,000 words long after being trimmed down significantly. And my thing was, I wanted people to read it more than anything else, more than I wanted to make money off it. I want to get the story out here, because I just love hearing people read it, and I love sharing the idea with people. So while indie publishing is expensive, and I'm probably not going to make any money off this until I've sold a couple thousand copies, to be perfectly honest, between the really nice cover and the editor we paid, we're in a hole for now. But it's okay, because every time I get a message from someone saying, oh my God, this character is so much fun, or how dare you, I threw my book across the room because I was crying so hard, which is literally a message I've gotten, it makes it all worth it.
I always love it when people tell me that my books make them cry, not because I'm trying to make people feel bad.
Right.
But you moved somebody so much emotionally with your characters.
Yes.
That they actually shed tears over your imagination.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That, and when someone says, I despise and hate this character so much, and it's a character I want you to despise and hate, oh, that's the stuff right there. You can pump that straight into my veins.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
It's so good. It's so much fun. I enjoy it immensely, and I can't get enough of it.
Well, it's like people are always asking, it's like, well, if you're not making money off your books, why do you do it? It's like, that's why we do it. Right there.
That's why we do it.
That's why we do it.
And my wife is convinced we're going to make money off of it in time. It's just the market has to shift, But, I mean, you mentioned making it a trilogy or something. It's going to be a trilogy. This is just the first installment.
That definitely gives everybody something to look forward to. Now, I was looking at Amazon, and you published this in May of this year. It's sitting at number 215 on Amazon's bestseller list in military fantasy.
Okay.
I don't think people realize what a big deal that is. It's not on sale. It's on for its regular price. There are literally millions of books on Amazon, and people are putting thousands more every single day.
Right.
The fact that you have a book of this size for the prices that you have, because it is a large book, and it's sitting at 215 without having a marketing campaign behind it.
Yeah, whatsoever. It's literally just word of mouth.
That is very impressive. I mean, for a debut novel by somebody that people have most likely never heard of,
no, they wouldn't have.
That close to the bestsellers list at this point is amazing.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
And I think that really speaks to the quality of the work for it to be positioned where it is. Now, this is the part of the show where we like to do 5 quick questions that never turn out to be quick, but we still do the bit anyway, just because it's fun.
Absolutely.
So question 1, what is a hidden talent that you have that you are very proud of, but is absolutely useless for being an author?
A hidden talent of mine. Oh, Lordy. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm really good at Catan. I won like a Settlers of Catan tournament one time. I showed up and no one knew who I was, and I stole the whole thing from under all these rabid gamers.
That's good. That definitely
we'll go with
qualifies.
that.
Number 2, if you weren't writing, what do you think you would be doing with that time?
Gaming. It's my biggest holdup with my writing. I'm a big gamer. That or just spending the time with my wife and daughter.
The gaming thing is actually another question on here. So what games are you into?
What games am I into? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I love team games. I love collaborative games. I'm a very social person. So I like playing games with other people. Currently, I play Apex Legends pretty consistently with some friends of mine, which is just a sci-fi battle royale shooter. I'm very, very much into all things Zelda. I've played every single Zelda and owned every Zelda. I'm really looking forward to the new Spider-Man for PlayStation coming out in October. I'm not going to get any writing done in October because I'm just going to be playing Spider-Man. I played Elden Ring. If it's on PlayStation or Switch or Nintendo, I'm probably into it to some degree or another. I'm not an Xbox person, never been an Xbox person. But yeah, fantasy, adventure, sci-fi, shooters. I play all kinds of games. There's not really something I won't try.
Do you have a Twitch account where people can actually watch you playing your games?
I actually do, and I've tried to stream on Tuesdays every once in a while when we play ranked on Apex Legends. I have maybe 5 subscribers. It's not something I've put a lot of effort or interest into. It's something I'd like to do, especially as I can grow an audience. But yeah, I do technically have one. I think it is linked on my link tree as well.
I actually have a Twitch account too. I'm the old lady gamer, and my header on my page says gaming since Pong.
That's fantastic.
Question 3. What is your favorite book to movie adaptation?
I mean, it's Lord of the Rings.
Now, how do you feel about this? Since you do have such a history with the books, how do you feel about the screen adaptations?
I love it. I understand the problems people have with some of them. And here's the thing. The Hobbits are flawed movies. My biggest problem with them being the love triangle and the elf and the dwarf thing, because it undermines Gimli and Legolas's relationship later. I love the Hobbit movies. I thoroughly enjoy them. I understand their flaws, but I really, really like them. I get Tom Bombadil being missing from The Lord of the Rings is frustrating for people. And there's a lot less musicality to it. But in a lot of ways, I think the movies have major improvements on the books in some ways, and just because we get to see the battle side of things, which is kind of missing from the books. A lot of times Tolkien's battles, it's just a page, or they reference the fact that it happened, and we don't get into that, where that's a major component of the films. But I mean, the Lord of the Rings films, I think, are the greatest movies of all time, hands down, and they're definitely the best book to movie adaptations ever. Some of my other favorite books to read growing up, Eragon, that adaptation was just dreadful. They recently did Artemis Fowl, which just broke my heart because they butchered it so terribly. I don't love a lot of movie adaptations of things, and I wish we could get better ones more often.
Yeah, definitely agree. Question 4. What is the first book you remember just falling in love with the story when either somebody read it to you or you first read it?
Probably The Hobbit, which my dad started reading to us at a very young age. I think that's the first memory I have of a book being read to me, because I vividly remember sitting on my bed with it was only 2 of them at the time, but 2 other younger brothers, and him reading about the Goblin Town and the goblins coming in the night and grabbing Thorin Oakenshield and Bilbo and all of them from inside the cave.
Question 5. How did you celebrate when you finally finished this book? Because I'm assuming there was a celebration after 6 years and all the work. How did you celebrate this?
Funny enough, my buddy Dave was actually in town around the time of that. So I used to work on a farm, and I'd been moved away from the farm for 2 years, but I'd kept a couple of big old filet mignons, which I've been storing in a freezer. And when Dave came into town, we celebrated. We had some nice whiskey, and I marinated the fillets for about a week before cooking those up. By the time we got back from me picking him up from the airport and stuff, it was 9 o'clock, but we had those fillets, and that was a good time.
So when did you actually finish the book?
I don't know. Because I'm still editing it. Someone messaged me with some formatting errors in the production of it. So any copies currently out there are basically collector's copies at this point, because I had to go in and make some adjustments to some formatting. So yesterday, I guess I finished it. No, I think we finished the final real draft in 2021 because we then queried for a year. So 2021, 2022, we queried, and then 2023 is when I was like, all right, we're self-publishing. I'm tired of waiting.
Yeah, I've had several traditionally published authors on the show. And even if you get a deal with a traditional publisher, unless you are already a name, you're really not going to get any assistance anyway. They're just going to publish it. They're done.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And they want you to bring in like thousands of followers on social media. And it's like, what is the point of you if I'm still doing all the work? You're just going to take my money and maybe make a cover that I may not even like, but you say fits and is what's going to sell on the market. Like, and you're going to tell me to chop it up and remove things, and and I mean, if a traditional publisher wants to come along and be like, hey, let me get in on this and let me help with distribution, that's a conversation I'm willing to have.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a conversation, like if this ever gets like adapted for television, I want to retain as much full creative control as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've like Netflix has recently put out a One Piece live action. One Piece is a manga anime, and the creator was extremely heavily involved in the show's creation, the live action adaptation, from casting to at one point, like they'd finished filming and he sent it back. He's like, nope, I'm not letting this release unless I think it's great. So reshoot some stuff. And it came out. I think it's one of the best anime live action adaptations ever by a long mile. And I mean, that's not saying much. Most of them aren't great, So like, yeah, if it's ever adapted into any sort of context, I would want to have just a lot of control and freedom, because I think people in Hollywood, I'm sorry to go off on a tangent here, they see products and they think, oh, that's good. And fans love it, but I can improve it. I can make it better, instead of realizing, hey, the reason it's popular and the reason fans love it is because of what it is. You don't need to improve it. You just need to adapt it.
Oh, yeah.
Every action hero has to be the same 6'2", crazy Jack Jim Bro kind of. Action heroes for the most part have to be in pretty good shape, right? But like my main character Peter, he's 5'10", he's no 6 foot tall dude. But like, I like to break the mold. I like to have different unique characters because that makes it more interesting. You appeal to a broader audience, and like that adaptation, that'll based on faces, not the story, right? My wife is constantly reminding me whenever I'm like fan casting an actor into a role or something, she's like, we're not doing live action, we're doing animation, because we want voices. And like Castlevania, that animation style would be like the dream for an adaptation for my show, because it would fit so perfectly and would look so cool, and we wouldn't have to compromise on budget, for like the environments and the action and the character designs and whatnot.
That would be amazing. I love Castlevania.
It's so good. I can't wait for the new season.
What is coming next for you? Because I know you have something coming up in October.
Yeah, so I've got my first book signing is coming up on Saturday, October 21st. So that's going to be in Statesboro, Georgia. There is a new kind of bookstore opening up. It's like a new used bookstore that's going to be a bed and breakfast and a coffee bar and eventual wine bar bookstore. Wow. So I was looking into doing a signing in Statesboro because that's where the college I graduated from is. It's where a lot of my readers are. And I was like looking at Books A Million, and they're like, well, no, you are print per order or whatever the term is. And they're like, you can't do a signing here. So I was just Googling local bookstores and trying to see if something could come up. And I found one. So I emailed the owner. I was like, hey, would you be interested in me doing a signing up there? And he's like, how did you find out about us? We're not even open yet. And then he's like, oh, hey, Mick. And it's a dude I knew from college. And he's like, yeah, come on out. We'll schedule it. We're opening in October, and then we'll schedule it. And you can be our first official author and do a signing here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. There's some other things coming too. There's book 2, which is in the works. That's years off. Over Labor Day, I did an exercise for myself, and I wrote a book. It's a gag book called Manly Motivations. And so I saw a video. This is a multi-factor thing. I was like, I bet I can write a little tiny book that I put no effort into, and it'll outsell my main book. So I haven't actually announced this anywhere, but because I'm still waiting on the print copies to come in. But it's this tiny little manly motivations book, which it's like a parody self-help or motivational book. And so the whole pitch is it's the book made to be destroyed. Because men like to destroy things. Men like to tear things up. So what you do is you read your motivation, and then you tear that page out, and you keep it with you, or for the day or the week, or you destroy it or do something with it. And then you go and you tear the next page out as you read it. And you just eventually, once you're done with the book, you've torn all the pages out and done different things with them. They have instructions on them. One's burn it, one's eat it, one's make a paper airplane, and it's just a 60, 70 page little piece of paper and and wood. But like, it's just a fun concept I had that I'm going to just throw out there and see what happens with it.
I love that though. It sounds fun. It sounds like it would be a great like stocking stuffer.
Yeah, stocking stuffer. That's exactly what I said. Stocking stuffer or gag gift for, all the girls on BookTok whose boyfriends or husbands don't read and get this as a gift for them. And I'm sure my wife is going to die a little inside every time I tear a page out of it or someone else tears a page out of it. But that's the whole point of it.
I love that.
Yeah, and we're working on a couple other things. I've got a Patreon. I'm talking with my co-author, and I haven't really announced this anywhere either, so this is as good a spot as any. If I can get the Patreon up to like 500 subscribers a month and it can stay there, I'll start releasing audio chapters. I'll record and release my own chapters of the book on there.
Oh, nice.
For that audience, because there's no other way I could conceivably do an audiobook for a long time. But that's kind of what we're gearing up for. We're also looking at doing like a D&D live play based in the world of the book. I want this to be a franchise. I really do. I want it to be like Star Wars, where like you've got different authors writing things in the world of the book and the story. I want to expand and share this world with other people and other creators. Like my co-author, he's writing a horror novella about some of the characters that disappear in the book and what happens to them. One of my beta readers started writing a story in the world about a glass city in Canada full of dwarves and like Nordic inspirational characters and stuff, which he's working on, which is fun. So like, I really want to broaden this, and the main series is going to be like 3 books, and then I've got ideas for 2 follow-up series eventually. So this is going to be continuing to be produced for a while, and I want to expand it and draw other people in and hit as many different mediums as we possibly can.
How many interviews have you done so far?
This is my second. I did one on live with another indie author named Sean, who's been doing a lot of indie author interviews live. Actually, I was the first one on there. So he's trying to spread that around, and he's got like hundreds of people lined up, and he just does live TikTok interviews.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's one thing I haven't tried to do is interviews on TikTok. That'll probably be something I'll add later.
Yeah, go for it.
So now, is there anything that you would like the listeners to know that we have not covered?
I think we've covered most of it. Yeah, I talked about the podcast concept, the Patreon, getting up there and making that into an audiobook. I'm an open door kind of person. Like, if you want to talk to me about my book, if you're reading it, just message me, please. I want to hear your thoughts. If they're negative, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to see what people don't like and how I can improve, of course. We need to sell probably 6,000 more copies to be able to produce book 2. So get the word out there so we can do that, because I know there's some people that are already eagerly waiting for it.
And all of your contact information and links to your social media will be available in the description of the podcast and on brokeheartbooks.com, so that when people want to find you, they can easily link up with you and let you know what they think.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much for being here today. This has been a fabulous conversation.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
So there you have it, my conversation with Mikel Melwasul. Don't forget to go and check out his new book, Paragon Exordium. You can find it on Amazon. Just check the links in today's podcast description. Now, don't forget, October 1st, our premiere issue of our companion magazine, Book Banter Magazine, will be coming out, so keep your eye out for that. Go sign up for our newsletter so that you don't miss a single issue. Because like with our podcast, if you love books like we do, you do not want to miss a single podcast or an issue of our magazine. So now you know what time it is, folks. For me, it's actually time to get ready because we're going to a concert tonight. It is a Queen tribute band. I'm going to be very happy later this evening. And that means it's time for all of you to go forth and be happy too.